Hello, welcome back for another video about Alteryx. When I started working with my date table and showing y'all how to create an effective date table, it got me thinking about other date-related reportings that I've done in the past and how it's the best way to solve some of those problems. And so what we're going to look at in this video is preparing your data so that it is easier to report. Now the reporting guys will tell you that their reporting tool can do all the data manipulations and processing that they need to do in order to get the report out. But then they'll turn around and tell you it's going to take them about 2 weeks to generate that report because they've got to play with the data a lot. This is where Alteryx can prepare that data so that it can be more easily presented into that report and make that report turnaround so much quicker. When you're dealing with the data warehouse world and you're looking at your dimensional data models, one of the structures that is overlooked is the roll-up tables and the summary tables. And this is where you've actually pre-calculated the data to make the reports being easier. Now sometimes it's a little expensive from an ETL standpoint to completely repopulate those summary tables. But what's 15 minutes in the middle of the night for a giant machine to do? But you can also apply this methodology to you dealing with your own specific needs and hopefully with a smaller set of data. So if we go to our puppies, and let's look first at the results of this data analysis that I performed with puppies. If you remember properly, well, not properly, but if you remember previously, we did some work with where the trainers that are training our puppies were keeping track of how many puppies and the charge was given to each puppy. And so obviously our management wants us to be able to go ahead and report this data out. So they came with the idea of two reports, both of which are rollups. Rollups basically are running up a hierarchy of some type to do reporting from the low level up to high level, summarizing it somewhere along the way. Now these can be geographical hierarchies such as regional, east, west, coast, central US, states, counties, cities. It could be your management structure of a salesman or an analyst and then their supervisor and manager and department head, etc. But primarily a lot of what you see is doing it by dates. What happened this week? How's it happening in the month? How's it happening in the year? A lot of management reporting for sales likes to see how things are going along the course of the month and compare it to the same point in time they were at it last month, see how things are going. So this is where you begin to get the roll-ups. So the two roll-ups that we looked at, one, we want to do a weekly revenue to look at each of our individual trainers and see how they are doing week over week. And so what we're going to do is roll the days up to the week. So each one of these peaks is the end of the week to show how much they finally turned in at the end of that week. Sort of like a paycheck you might want to write them for this amount of money. And you can see that poor old Bob here has a very regular process to where he basically creeps up all during the week, and we can then begin looking at each of our other trainers and see if they have some. Mary, for example, doesn't do a whole lot of training, so she's a bit sporadic with the way her roll-ups look. And then Sally sort of had an off week here in the middle. So this is a good way of being able to look at it and say, hey, how are these trainers doing on a week by week basis, so I can figure out if they're having problems at any specific week. And then finally, we'll look at the total revenue by trainer. And here we want to look at what each data point is for their week. And then just simply accumulating that over time so that we can see their growth. Now, typically what I would want to do with this is either look at this as within a year and do year-over-year calculations, but our data set's a little bit too small to do anything that detailed. So I basically just said, let's roll this up on a week-by-week basis and see what it looks like in an accumulative total. And we can see up here very quickly that Bob has done a good job. So what does the data look like that I used to report this with? Well, we can go ahead and pull up our Alteryx. Here's our Alteryx. And look at the data set that I created, and we'll look at the workflow that created these because very simply what I wanted to do is to do this roll-up process, put the data out there so it can be seen. In case you're looking at the data, you can do this through the browse, which is pretty hard to see down here. You can also go ahead and just simply click on the browse record number, and this will pop it out into a new window. So that makes it a little bit easier to see. So this is my roll up to the weekly or my daily summary fact, where for our trainer we have the calendar date, we had the number of puppies that they trained that week, the amount of fees that they came in that week, and then we've rolled it up on a running weekly basis so that Monday through Sunday we can accumulate up, and then it starts again on the next Monday. But I still have the daily counts in this table and the daily dollars, so I can do some additional reporting if I want to. But then again, it makes it easier just to look at what's happening weekly. There's no reason not to go ahead and create lots of metrics within this table should you have a need for those. But in our case, we just had this one. We can also look at what I call my weekly. And this is where I now have the week of the year. Now I got this out of my date table, and if you looked at last week's video, there was not a week number in my date table, and I talked about at the beginning of that video that your date table will grow as you find more needs to it. And sure enough, the very next week I realized that I left off the week number, and it makes it very easy to do roll up. So here is my calendar date, here's the week of the year that it is, and then I can give the overall summary of the number of puppies that were trained and the dollar amounts, and then I can run that total forward all the way through to the end of that trainer. So here's trainer 1's total revenues and trainer 2's total revenues, etc. So it makes it very easy to do this reporting with us. So if we want to look at how this workflow goes, we don't want to go into the details because it gets to be a little complex. But if you allow me to do some cutting and pasting, we can skip through or run through this pretty quickly. And we'll go ahead and paste in our data that we're bringing in. That didn't work very well. Let's try that again. There we go. We ignore what's on the left here. What we brought in is we brought in our puppy training fact table. It had the basic data that we had. Run through this very quickly just to see how we started it out. So this is the detail for every puppy that was trained and when they were trained. We want to go ahead and make sure we get data in there. And one of the changes I made in this workflow, because I've heard people say, well, they don't have the ability to create a date table in a database. What should they do? And the answer real simply is save it as an Alteryx database file. They're very efficient. Date table is never going to be that big. How far back in history do you need to go? How far forward do you need to look? You can keep that limited. And so in this case, we have 8,000 records, and you barely notice when it reads it. So what we want to do here is we can take the basic training information out. We want to take the basic date table out. What we want to do is, first of all, is just simply summarize this by day. So we take the trainer and their date and their fee amount and sum it up by that day so that we don't have each individual puppy that's being trained, but we have that day's worth of counts. We then take that information and join that to the date dimension. So then what we can get out of that, as you continue to float through there, we can go ahead and get all the pertinent information that we need, including the week of the year that we needed to do that weekly roll-up with. And continuing along that vent, what I want to do now is begin to calculate that running total. As I copy and paste off screen. Drag this in. It's always a good idea when you're doing your running totals and there's a lot of your other positionally related information is go ahead and sort it. It doesn't cost that much. Alteryx does a great job of sorting your data coming in. So we sort this data by the trainer and by the date. That means I can drop in off of here off the transform. We have this running total. We also have a weighted average, which is another thing the financial guys love, but I don't have a use case for those put together yet. But this running total says that I want to group it by the trainer and the week and summarize the puppies and the daily fees. What this gets me out of this, if I go ahead and run this through very quickly, all finished. So what I get out of that happens to be, and you notice that I did a sort for review so I can see what it looks like sorted. So make sure you see you have each trainer, their date, the week of the year for that day, and etc. And then we'd have the values. Then we'd have the running total. So we start to generate this and it resets over the week. So we'll run up daily totals into weekly and then present that data. What I did at this point in time is save that out to a database table, and that's what I use for my reporting. But you might want to say, hold on, how do we go ahead and get, that's just the weekly data. What did you do about generating that weekly rolled up to the cumulative? Well, I can do that in the same workflow. The data is already here and partially summarized. So all that I want to do then is sort of repeat that process coming back the other way. And tack it onto here and re-summarize that daily data into weekly data. Drop that into here. I have my weeks. Now I'm going to do by trainer and calendar date. A week of the year is our summarization level. So now it'll give us the data at the week level. Prep it by sorting it. Run it through my roll-up with the running total, just simply now by trainer, because I don't need to see it broken down. Just want to be a cumulative over history. So breaking this down by trainer, we'll go ahead and roll it up at each of the puppy counts and the fees amount. So that way I get my overall running total going through there. Go and take a look at what we have by running this as well. So now we have the week of the year and the running total cumulative what it happens to be. Now at this point in time, I was completely ready to report this out when I realized that no one really wants to see a report that has the week of the year in it. They would really like to know the date. And since we did our calculations by defining it being going from the Monday through Sunday, we want to go ahead and tack on Sunday's date to each of these records, which presents with a slightly different problem. We can do some calculation off of this, but hold on, what we talked about before is going back to our date table. So if we go ahead and bring in our date table, if you remember, our date table has in it the week of the year. But what I do is just go ahead and I can pull off the Sunday, because I know by definition that the Sunday happens to be the first or the day of the week that's numbered 1. So therefore that any week that is the Sunday gives me the week that it's in. So you could pull off any day here that you want. If you want to report this as Wednesdays, you could do that as well, but we want to report it to Sunday because that is the end of the week. So I can just pull off all the Sundays, separate that data. And then all I need to do at that point in time is go ahead and join that data. So my data is coming in, that is rolled up. I join it to my date records that have the year week on it for Sundays. That way I can choose off the Sunday itself. So now I have the calendar data associated with each of those weeks, which makes it for a much nicer report. Now typically then I would take this data, or someone would take this data and run it into a report. I am not a really big reporting guy. I don't have a sophisticated reporting tool, but I like to see what the data looks like, and that's why I use Alteryx. Alteryx can do that reporting. It's always a good idea to go ahead and show the analyst that helped you with this what a report would look like with the data that you created, just for that test to make sure it makes sense. And so you can see what I've done in this data is that I have my weekly summary and my daily summary. I bring in my trainer dimensions, so I actually get the trainer's name rather than their number. do that join, and I just pop it into the Alteryx interactive chart to do reporting off of. And that's where I generated each one of these reports. This will not display because I need to run data into it before you can see it. So if you're actually doing reporting through this tool, make sure that you run the workflow. What I've done then is I've created two reports, my daily report and my cumulative total weekly report. I union those two together and I put them into a PDF file. Pop it through. This brings me up the PDF file, which I can click on, and that brings me up my report. It has my individual reports for my trainers and then the total revenue report at the end. There's also a video if you want to know how to go ahead and generate these reports. I have a video in my library that talks about report generations and how to create these types of interactive reports, but this is just a good check to make sure the data looks good and is proper. And I can give that back to business analysts, and then they can turn all this information over to their reporting expert, and they can generate the report that they want. So that walks us through this all pretty quickly. Again, what we do is want to look at our data, getting the date into there or any other hierarchy to marry with that data so that then I can do my running total or my roll up so that I can generate some summary reports, data that's at a little bit different level than the individual transactions. Creating summary tables where necessary in my data mart so that it makes it easy to do reporting with. Again, if you like this video, make sure you subscribe so you can see new ones that are coming up. Give me some comments if you have any thoughts or ideas. If you have further questions about anything that I did in this video, post that as a comment and I will get back to you. Have a great day. Thanks for watching.